It turns out the island, ocean, and pond framework doesn't just apply to developer adoption of Cardano, it also applies to user adoption. We were never going to recruit and turn those hardcore Ethereum and Bitcoin guys that the big Cardano social media personalities spar with every day on Twitter, nor did we ever need to. That was always the pond. And institutionally, Cardano's sights have always been set on the ocean. From the start, this has been based on a sound rationale. Your coworkers have no idea who those Ethereum people are, but they've all probably heard the name Snoop Dogg. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to talk about the big secret announcement from the Cardano 360. It was Snoop, along with some important development details that were released in the same Cardano 360. We'll also talk about some negative developments at the European Parliament and the SEC, as well as Grayscale's potential legal war plans. If you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Sometimes it's easy to forget that crypto is really just a tiny niche subculture. We think it has a huge future, and I believe we're correct about that. I believe the entire crypto scene is correct about the future of crypto, but right now we're still a tiny niche subculture. We're barely a blip on the radar when you're looking at all of social media. And there was no better reminder of that than today when we found out the big surprise, the big secret surprise. And I'm actually kind of surprised they were able to keep this under wraps. But the big surprise was Snoop. Snoop was on Cardano 360, which was not something I thought I'd be saying when I woke up this morning. Here's why this is important. So first of all, the announcement. Snoop Dogg is doing something with Claymates. He loves Clay Nation. And they're going to be having what I believe is going to be called Baked Nation. We're going to find out more about this on April 5th at 1800 UTC, when we'll see Champ Medici, Snoop, and Charles in a Twitter space. And I'm sure we'll hear all about their plans for the Baked Nation. This is going to be something very cool. But here's the really important part. Snoop has 20 million followers. True, we could all name celebrities who have larger Twitter followings. But this is gigantic when you compare it to any kind of crypto social media following. There are people in the Cardano ecosystem who spend a good portion of every single day marching into battle for us and fighting the maximalists of other blockchains who have been very unfair to Cardano, very intellectually dishonest, all kinds of bad things we could say about them. And there are certain big social media personalities in the Cardano ecosystem who fight them every single day. And I appreciate what they do. I find it highly entertaining. But at the same time, we have to ask, what would the Mortal Kombat flawless victory look like if those Cardano personalities were able to decisively come out victorious over those maximalists for their blockchains? You could argue that flawless victory might look like them convincing those maximalists of other blockchains to turn on whatever blockchain they've been an advocate of and suddenly use whatever powers of persuasion, whatever pull they have with the public to use those things in favor of Cardano instead. Here's why what we're talking about is truly the pond and not the ocean. Even if we turned Vitalik himself, even if Vitalik was convinced by all of the arguments on social media that Cardano is the way, and he turned his back on Ethereum and became an influencer on behalf of Cardano, used all of his pull on the public, look at how many followers Vitalik has. 3.6 million. Even Vitalik himself, if he became an advocate for Cardano, that would only put the name Cardano in front of 20% as many people as Snoop. You could make arguments all day about the network effects of someone like Vitalik or some other big crypto influencer influencing other people who would go on to impact others. But the fact of the matter is, that this is what the ocean actually looks like. It looks like a tweet from somebody with 20 million followers who says, "This will be fun. Hashtag Cardano." That clip with Snoop was just 43 seconds at the end of an hour-long Cardano 360, and we heard about a lot of promising things before that. First up were Nick Nafak of IOG, Ken Kodama of Emergo, and David Seymour of Wave Financial, who let us know that the three entities have come together and they're working on this ADA yield fund that we talked about in the video yesterday, which is largely, it sounds like it's largely going to be used. It's a $100 million initial fund that's largely going to be used to inject liquidity into Cardano DEXs and Cardano loan platforms. So if you were concerned about the rate of accumulation of capital in the Cardano DEXs and other DeFi products, it sounds like Cardano had a plan for that. And at 100 million, pretty good plan. Ben Goertzel came on to give us some news, and he was sporting kind of a cowboy scientist look, which oddly is pretty familiar to the Cardano community. He talked about the AGIX ERC20 to Cardano converter. He also gave some sort of overarching philosophical thoughts about SingularityNet, AI, and blockchain technology. He said he's basically trying to create a beneficial singularity. And the way he described it, obviously that implies that there are versions of a singularity that are not beneficial. And I take that to mean beneficial to humankind, not necessarily just beneficial to artificial intelligence. I think we can all get behind, as humans, we can all get behind a singularity which is beneficial to humans, not one which is like adversarial to humans and only good for AI. He thinks AI and blockchain technology are key to this type of beneficial singularity. And what he means by that, what meaning I took from what he said, was that the important thing with AI is who controls it. And blockchain will allow AI to be controlled in a decentralized manner so that not just one party controls the AI. Everybody can control it, and it can be beneficial for everyone. He said and here's where he really did not hold back about Ethereum. This kind of surprised me. He said he loved the Ethereum guys, but Solidity isn't a very advanced language, and proof of work just hastens the heat death of the planet. So the next time some random Ethereum social media account tries to convince you that Solidity isn't that bad, you can reference Ben Goertzel. I hate the appeal to authority type arguments, but if it's Ben Goertzel versus some random dude on the internet, I think I'm with Ben Goertzel on the overall value of Solidity and the impact of proof of work versus proof of stake. He says the next step will be staking of AGIX tokens. Then the next item after that will be bringing the Singularity.net marketplace online in Cardano. After that, a new SingularityNet sidechain called Hypercycle. That'll be the next thing we see. And he said he's been spending a lot of time working on that lately. Then Tim Harrison let us know IOG screwed something up. We don't have 500 projects building on Cardano. We have 886 projects building on Cardano. We're going to be huge, guys, and it's going to be hard to keep track of everything. So Morgan Schofield, head of ecosystem growth, came on to tell us about the Essential Cardano. They would love the community to use Essential Cardano as a wiki for Cardano. It's going to look like this, and there will be an open website beta in April. The address is essentialcardano.io. Sebastian Nagel told us about Hydra. He reminded us that the team recently successfully opened a Hydra head, and he noted that people are expecting Hydra in the June or October upgrade windows, but he wants people to know it's not a binary on-off switch with Hydra. There will be versions of Hydra before and after the hard fork combinator event windows in June and October, since Hydra doesn't need a hard fork. This is IOG subtly telling us Hydra is ahead of schedule. Hydra is going to be ready before June. There are going to be people using Hydra even before the June hard fork combinator event, which is pretty big. So it sounds like we're going to get some pretty operative versions of Hydra even before the Vasil hard fork. He said documentation will be at hydra.family. Next up, we finally heard directly from Terra Virtua. We've been waiting for these Cardano Summit NFTs from back in September. We've been waiting all this time to find out when we can actually get these NFTs. They kind of delivered us these digital assets that existed only on the Terra Virtua platform, but we knew we were eventually going to get actual Cardano NFTs. Apparently, that's finally going to happen. What I understood was, and I could have gotten this wrong because it was kind of intermingled with the whole story of the development of Terra Virtua, but what I understood was that within a few weeks, they should finally have those assets self-mintable to us, the users. In explaining the development of his organization, CEO Jawad Ashraf said in 2018, they set out to develop a metaverse with NFTs. The only problem was nobody knew what either of those two things were. Nobody knew what the metaverse was, and they definitely didn't know what a metaverse project involving NFTs was. But he says within a few months, they'll have fully customizable metaverse environments where you might have fully 3D rigged versions of your NFTs. And then soon there will be entire worlds provided by Terra Virtua. I'm looking forward to that. I have no idea if that will include our Cardano Summit NFTs, if they'll be included in these metaverse type environments, and there will be 3D rigging of those NFTs. I mean, some of those were, like trees and things like that. So I'm not so sure, how operative those would be for us. I don't think the tree NFT is necessarily going to be like your avatar, but we'll see what comes of Terra Virtua, and hopefully we actually get these NFTs in the next couple of weeks. You and I both know Cardano 360 would not be complete without the technical update from Triple H, Harrison, Hammond, Hemsley, plus John Woods. And they started out with Nigel giving us a rundown of what happened in the February update, what they're planning in the June Vasil hard fork combinator event, and what's going to happen in the October Chang hard fork. Kevin Hammond took us through exactly what Plutus changes we're going to see in the Vasil hard fork combinator event. We've covered this a lot of times, but people still ask me about this regularly. So here we go. SIPs 31 through 33. Those are reference scripts, reference inputs, and inline datums. We're also going to see redeemers in transaction information. Very quickly, reference scripts will allow you to use scripts that have been previously used on the chain just by referencing them without having to include the entire script. Same thing for inputs. You could just reference an input previously used on the chain. Inline datums will let you refer directly to simple inputs instead of to the hashes of those inputs. And redeemers will allow scripts to cooperate by using shared redeemers. This is a whole lot of saved data that won't have to go into each block every time you want to use one of these four things. John Woods talked to us about the VRF Crypto Primitive. This is a verifiable random function. You put in a secret key and a random bit of data, and you get a proof and another random bit of data. They use this for their deterministic slot leadership schedule for the stake pools. And they just optimized it so that they only have to do one VRF run instead of two. You can see the theme here. They're getting rid of duplicative things. They're making everything leaner and quicker. Next up, Jamie Foxx told us about what you do when you're a cab driver and you pick up Tom Cruise, who is an assassin, and then you start dating his ex-wife in real life. Wait, no. Next up, Kevin Hammond talked to us about Collateral. And if you've never understood why we have Collateral in Cardano or how it works, this was actually a great explanation. He explained that it's a two-step process. First of all, whenever you're running a Plutus script, you run the Plutus script. The first step of the process is that it's run locally in your wallet, not on chain, just locally in your wallet to determine if running that Plutus script will be successful or if it will fail. Step 2 is when it's actually run on the chain. If you do step 1, if you run the Plutus script locally and you know it's going to fail and you still run it on the chain, knowing that it's going to fail, that's when your collateral gets spent. You lose your collateral because you should have known that that transaction was going to fail because it runs first locally in your wallet. We have to do this to prevent people from spamming the chain. If we didn't have this collateral requirement, anybody could attack the chain just by running a huge number of meaningless spam transactions, and it'd be a bad day for everybody. So we have to have this collateral requirement. However, they've decided that the current collateral amount, which is much higher than the actual cost to run a script on the chain, is a little too draconian. It's a little too much. So they're reducing the amount of collateral required to run a script on chain to the exact amount it actually costs to run the script on chain, instead of this like very excessive amount. They've also made it so that you can use non-ADA tokens as collateral. Obviously, this is a lot easier if you're doing a transaction that just involves other tokens besides ADA. You don't have to include ADA just for this collateral requirement. They've also made it easier for hardware wallets to deal with collateral. Next, John Woods talked to us about pipelining and input endorsers. And he kind of attempted to reconcile the very technical article we saw out of the research team on pipelining with some of the non-technical explanations they've tried to boil down for us in these Cardano 360s and mid-month updates. He said pipelining will bring a lot of changes. The blog they released was very technical. Pipelining is really just getting the blocks transmitted to your neighbors more quickly. What they'll bring in June will be a version of pipelining, diffusion pipelining, that will bring us to the sweet spot in headroom to next go to input endorsers. And here's where he dropped a pretty big bombshell, a good bombshell though, not a destructive bad one, a good one. He said, input endorsers will be a kind of end game that will see us scale out for the next 5 years. Let me say that again. Pipelining will pave the way for input endorsers. It'll give us the headroom we need for input endorsers. Input endorsers is the end game that will see us scale for the next 5 years. How do you like that? Cardano's already got a plan that they're going to execute in the June hard fork combinator that's going to see us through scaling for the next 5 years. How about that? Ethereum, Solana, Luna, Avalanche. I don't know how you're going to compete with this after June. From good Cardano news to pretty rough general crypto news, the European Parliament has passed that legislation that Brian Armstrong of Coinbase was so worried about that we discussed yesterday. You remember, this is the rule that basically said, hey, if you try to send any amount of crypto to any wallet from a regulated platform like Coinbase, Coinbase has got to KYC that other wallet that you're sending to or receiving from. Further, if you receive any amount of crypto that exceeds 1,000 euros, they automatically have to report that to the authorities, regardless of whether or not it's suspicious. It looks like that's passed. The next step, just like that earlier Bitcoin legislation we looked at a little bit ago, the next step is that it goes into trilogues where the European Parliament, the Council of the EU, and the European Commission all have to agree on it. So things could still change, but this is pretty bad. If you think that crypto privacy is a good thing, and I think most of us do, this is pretty bad for that outlook. On the same day, it looks like the SEC has released Staff Accounting Bulletin number 121. This bulletin basically concludes that the dangers of crypto as to technological risks, legal risks, and regulatory risks are so great that in their little hypothetical they discuss, they say, as long as entity A is responsible for safeguarding the crypto assets held for its platform users, including maintaining the cryptographic key information necessary to access the crypto assets, the staff believes that entity A should present a liability on its balance sheet to reflect its obligation to safeguard the crypto assets held for its platform users. I know what you're thinking. If you're not familiar with corporate financials, you're probably thinking to yourself, who cares? Nobody looks at these balance sheets anyways. But this is actually pretty crippling. If crypto companies have to record a liability just because the SEC thinks these risks are so great, and they specifically mention holding the cryptographic key. I mean, they're basically saying, hey, we think the risk of you losing the key to the assets is so great that if you're holding crypto assets for your users as a platform, we think you need to record a liability on your balance sheet. Again, not great for crypto companies. Finally, Grayscale is getting all fed up with the SEC They're saying, I think all options are on the table come July. And by that, they mean if the SEC does not approve a Bitcoin ETF by July, Grayscale is going to prepare for litigation war. The Bloomberg article title said, Grayscale's fight for a Bitcoin ETF could end in lawsuit against the SEC. You're probably aware that given what's happened with XRP and the SEC, Ripple, and the SEC has not fared too well in recent litigation with crypto. Caitlin Long added, this is one of a few potential big fights over U.S. crypto regulation that seems likely to end up in court soon. A number of Bitcoin whales are gearing up for exactly these fights. We'll see what happens with all of this. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic spring weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.